Hi. Hello. Hi. I have a beer and some paper and a clicker, and that's like too many things for me. I thought that would be like a fun typographic gag, but it's already, some people have asked me what's gone wrong with my first slide, so I don't know whether that's even working. I am Andrew Diprose, I'm Creative Director of Wired. I have been at Wired since launch in 2008, and it's my 20th year as an editorial designer this year, which makes me feel kind of old. Thank you, it's nice for having me here. I said this earlier without gushing too much, I'm a big fan of the site and regularly on there, so don't look too closely at Wired because you'll find where we get all our great talent from. Okay, here we go, great. That kind of shows you what I've been up to for the last 20 years. You can see there were some fallow times in that lineup. I started with work experience at ID magazine and kind of went from ID magazine to Smash Hits. If anybody knows what Smash Hits is, that's quite a leap. Maybe in the wrong direction, some people might think, but I kind of enjoyed it at the time. Okay, here we go. This is kind of a before and after. It's like Dumb and Dumber. Pre-Wired when I was at GQ magazine, and then after Wired, I obviously only have one face for a contributor's picture, and it's only getting worse over time. What I want to do, I've already started waffling. What I want to do, I've only got 10 minutes, which is it's a long time if you're at a dentist, but a very short amount of time if you want to rattle through some content. I like to go to hear people talk, and I like to have something I can take away with me. So I've tried to make it super relevant. Some things I've learned at Wired magazine, I've got 5 points. That way you can know when I'm starting, that way you can know when I'm finishing. Okay, here we go. Launching Wired magazine, or criticism and the art of sucking it up. I don't know how many people here have launched a magazine at a big publisher's, but there are no shortage of people to tell you what they think. I came from GQ magazine, and at that time I felt like I pretty much knew what I was doing in magazine design, and I think that was a really big mistake. My first meeting for Wired magazine kind of went like this. I pretty much designed a whole dummy. I printed it out at 97% and put it in a flip book. I got to the managing director's office, and he looked at the first page and said, all the type looks a little bit small. And it confused me all the way through. Every single page he turned, he got progressively more angry, till I ended up walking on my own down the corridor with the editor going, Andrew, Andrew, as I walked off into the distance angrily. I had a lot to learn. This was my first issue. Scott, who was the art director of Wired in the US at that time, said to me, I think you're gonna look back and you're probably gonna hate the first year and a half of the magazine, that's healthy. I can hardly look at the first 3, maybe 4 years, and we've been going 5 years. I actually think that's healthy, but the point I'm really trying to make in a rambling way is that, really at that time I wasn't seeking out criticism. Anybody who had something to say really was I felt threatened by. One day, I don't know what happened, but I kind of had this complete I don't know, it was like a complete change of thought, and I suddenly realised that all the people who offered me advice, whether it's from the US, whether it's from management, whether it's from previous publications, they all had something to say, and probably 50% of it was very valid, and I was the person who really needed to learn. And when I started taking that on board, the magazine looked better, and in those 6 months I probably learned more than than I've done in the last 4 years before that time. There's what I am. I'm not even going into the voice, but since the Will I Am cover, I kind of feel like a bit better about it. Okay, Wired is no longer a magazine. When I started, I did think it was a magazine. Here we go. There's print magazine in the middle there. Basically, Wired is a brand. I didn't think about it like that at the time, but Wired these days is a brand. We are very proud that we have integrity, we tell important stories, and we are creative. Now, when we started, we were just doing a print magazine, and nobody had held an iPad before, nobody had looked at any content on a phone. There was no idea that there would be Wired conferences or a consulting business or a podcast. This has happened in the last 5 years. I've had to change my thinking about how I work, the way I work, and my workload has changed. And I think it's healthy that now I am thinking of how we view the content specific to the medium rather than just thinking about printed pages, lovely though they are. You know, when it comes down to it, I don't know how many people are, I should have said this earlier, how many people, I presume you're all magazine lovers, which is really lovely, but it's interesting for me. I've got to have my head half in the print camp, half in the digital camp, half in thinking about how we're working on the brand when it comes to events and consulting. Okay, I'm already on point 3, or maybe I'm rattling through it. Okay, here we go. There is an idea in there somewhere, damn it. I don't know how you get your kicks creatively. I assume you're all creative people, and for me it really distills down. The pleasure I get from my work is from having an idea, whether it's a simple idea or something very clever, and seeing it come to life. And if I can affect an audience with that idea, then the pleasure just increases. And magazines are the perfect place to have this, you know, whether weekly, monthly or yearly. The idea that I can think myself out of a tough situation and hopefully, you know, create something of value and tell a story to an audience, and the audience is there, is immensely satisfying, and that is an utter joy with magazines. Okay, the editor's like, we've got a cover to do. I think it's all going to be about failure, which kind of was part of my first point. The idea, a very wide idea, I'm sure you all know, of that failing fast and learning from your mistakes and moving on is really to be heartily approved of. A lot of Silicon Valley companies that we have featured, and a lot of very successful tech companies have started with that. The people obviously haven't, you know, struck gold on their first go. They've made a lot of failures, they've learned from it, and they've moved on, and that's really approved of. This country and Europe, I think, it's still a little bit frowned upon. Anyway, either way, the idea of a cover that's all about failure didn't, you know, it didn't whet my appetite. The idea that almond sugar was on it just compounded the misery. You know, we racked our brains, and I feel like it was one of my toughest covers and one of my most pleasurable covers with the outcome. The readership really engaged with it, and I'm pretty proud of it. We did, you know, with no irony, the printers did say, is there something wrong with this cover? Okay, this is another one. The cover story is all about Google algorithms. That was a joy as well. A very important company, very important story, but a little bit tough visually. For the cover, we just went super simple. We die cut a hole in the center of the cover. Google, just like Google, everybody recognizes the logo. Is that going on? Is that moving on? There you go. That's the cover. That was the inside of the first page. Made it a little bit tough to sell an advert on the inside of the front cover with a die cut. But again, the readership loved it, and that was our highest selling issue of the year. I have this constant sort of this kind of dialogue about some of our most successful covers are some of the covers which are the simplest. You know, we tell a very simple message, we get it straight out there, and the readership like it, everybody seems to like it. I'll spend weeks crafting a cover, case in point being my 60th cover for Wired, where I had a cover meeting the other day. We've been working on it for 3 weeks, turned up at the managing director's office for a meeting about it, didn't like it. First cover turned down in 5 years. So I think there's something said for doing something simply. This was another one, Raspberry Pi. I assume you all know about Raspberry Pi. £16 computer, massive British success story, global success story. It's just a small computer. This was our end result. This was how we got there. We wanted to do something simple and heroic. We had a nice case made for it that kind of glowed, and it was transparent, it was nice. We had beautiful photography from Wilson Hennessy, and I wanted to work with Jordan Metcalf. I don't know whether you know his work, for absolutely ages, and he worked on this thing, and it was on the far left-hand side. I thought that was amazing. It kind of looked heroic and a bit filmic and epic, and you know, it was beautiful. The typography was beautiful, the shadow was beautiful. Nobody liked the colour, and everybody thought it would be miserable and dark on newsstand. So we pushed it and we made it simpler. We went to the middle. We had this bevel type. This was over a couple of weeks. Stripped it right down, made it super simple. And when it actually came down to it, much as I loved his work, the one on the right-hand side was the one we ran with, which was our simple typeface with a bit of a fade on it. But it sold really, really, really well. I don't know really what you're going to learn from that, but I can't. Okay, surround yourself with talent. Okay, I'm going to try and speed up a little bit. This is another really obvious point. Especially when I started Wired magazine, our art department was 3 people, now it's 9 people. But it was me, the picture editor, and my deputy. And there was a feeling that I wanted to try and do everything myself, and I think the magazine was worse because of it. Over time, I have tried to surround myself with the best people I could find, talented people, people who I can go to, people who I can say, oh, I think, you know, you are going to be better with composition on this layout, you are going to be better detailing on this layout, and people I can go to with no kind of sense of pride that are only going to make the magazine better. It's taken me a while to learn about that. And luckily I'm surrounded by some brilliant people, and they are a joy to work with. There they are, slightly desaturated for your enjoyment. Okay. Surrounding myself with talent is a lot further reaching than the staff. Years and years ago, my first year as a magazine designer, I had a friend who was working on a newspaper, and he was talking about working with this amazing photographer. He was so excited, and I was a little bit like, yeah, what, you know, whatever. I was a little bit naive. I didn't really realise I spent the whole of my time probably pre-wired trying inadvertently to design myself out of a fix, rather than finding the raw talent who were going to supply the best illustration and photography or filmmaking that I could find. And it took me until, you know, I don't know, much longer than it should do for me to find that. Now with Wired, all I want to do is make a great environment for people to show off their work. I want to show that I respect their work, I want it to be a nice environment, and I want to coax people to do their best work for me, because quite often the people for editorial won't be doing it to make the dollar. They're going to be doing it because it's going to be a nice place to show off their work. Nadav Kanda, beautiful, like the Thames link that we have photographed by Christopher Rudquist. These are some of my favourite shots. Liam Sharp, amazing, shot a photo story for us in Africa about a company called Videre that are fighting human rights abuses, where he basically had to turn up. They wouldn't tell him where he was going. We couldn't even tell him what town he was going to be shooting in. He had to turn up to find somebody because he was shooting people that were in danger. So to get a shot like that in the background of some weird wasteland that he didn't even know where he was going to go, I think is pretty impressive. Tom Nagy, these were on It's Nicer actually. We sent somebody along to Lego, which was a beautiful opportunity. We're all Lego fans, and to send Tom, who normally does car photography, to do something like that was a real treat. Okay, here we go. Chris Chrisman shooting Richard Branson. We had 7 minutes with Richard Branson that turned into 4 minutes by the time he turned up. Chris is brilliant, a brilliant photographer, and he already had 2 lighting setups. We were at the test facility. We got great access. We've been working on the story for 2 years. It came down to 4 minutes. He had 2 setups, lighting setups. That's one of them, and the other one was shot under a wing. And literally, Richard turned up, hello, good, did his thing, amazing, superstar. And literally, as we were packing up the stuff, we saw him flying off on his jet as we were still packing the stuff up. That was a bit hairy, but I think he got the shot. Just to wrap up, this is point 5. I've spoken very fast, sorry, I apologise, but I hope there's been something for you in there. Get another project. I am blessed with Wired magazine in that I get to do some really fun, creative work. But whether you're you're in a position where you feel like you can do that kind of work, or whether you're in a frustrating role, I would heartily recommend that everybody else find themselves something else to do as well. This is a magazine that I published with my brother called The Ride Journal. And we've been doing it in exactly the same amount of time as Wired magazine. Unfortunately, I've only done 8 copies of the Ride Journal and 60 of Wired, so that says something about how I spend my time. But the point being that I get something that I get to use a completely different part of myself as a designer with the Ride Journal. I don't know if anybody's seen it. It's very simple, it's very uncomplicated, whereas Wired is all about the new and exciting and being confrontational with the reader. The Ride Journal is very, very simple. And I think I love to see designers or creatives come to see me with personal projects, because it says a lot about them and about how passionate they are and about how they like to get work out there. And I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You have you have an outlet for your best work. People can see you're passionate. They can come with you along that journey, and then I think you can up your creativity, and people can see really what you're capable of. And yeah, that I think is about it.